when Jesus goes to pray, he pauses in a way, right? So we don't pause in our society. We react. So there's a lot of reaction, but he prays, he pauses. He's troubled, so he pauses. And he does that 3 times, right? He keeps trying to have his friends wake up and pray with him, to have the people wake up and pray with him. Wake up and pause, right? Don't sleep.
It has to do with it's had to do with attention. He's saying attend, because you can't accept something if you don't attend. You have to first of all be aware of what of how things are laying themselves out. You have to be aware in order to say yes. You can't, if you say yes without being aware, you're going to be a slave of what's coming. But you're just going to be dragged around by it. You're just going to be tossed back and forth by events. But if you're attentive and you see you see what's coming, and then you say yes. But that image of Christ is very powerful. The image of Christ coming down from the mountain, and then having people sleep at the bottom. It really is a cosmic image. It has to do with the idea of attention itself, right? Because at the bottom of the mountain, you could say on the periphery of our experience, we have distraction and sleep and all these things that aren't the attention that we need to deal with the world. And so that which goes up to the top of the mountain and attends and sees the pattern of heaven, you could say, is constantly saying to all these elements on the side, wake up, stop being distracted, stop being asleep, attend, so that you can live, forthrightly. So obviously it's dealing with what Christ is dealing with there, but it ends up being an image of our experience all the time, like of our everyday experience.
And often that is what happens to people. It isn't until their leg is trapped in a snare that they are aware. And that's only the first step to finding your way. Good morning. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri with my husband. We're on a book tour, flying to California this afternoon. I'm going to release another podcast with Jonathan. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about him in case you didn't see my other podcast. His name is Jonathan Pageau. He's an artist. He's a symbolic thinker. He's a YouTuber. He's the editor of the Orthodox Arts Journal. He's an expert icon carver of Eastern Orthodox icons. And we talked about the crucifixion and prayer in the Orthodox tradition and in the Catholic tradition. This is the second time, or maybe the third time, that we talked about the crucifixion. It's a big subject and there's lots to understand, and I'm sure I've only scraped the surface, but in an hour of talking with Jonathan, you get little nuggets of inspiration and insight. And so I hope that you get some insights from our discussion. Thank you for listening. That's all I have for today. So we're going to talk about the crucifixion, and I'd be interested in talking a bit about prayer as well. The Jesus prayer. I've got 2 books on the Jesus prayer that I'm just beginning to research and dig into. And if we could just talk a little bit about that, it'll give me courage to continue in that direction.
Sure.
And I looked up a little bit about Eastern Christian prayer and saw 2 words that I'd never heard, Hesychasts and Eastern Orthodox text called Philokalia. Yeah, those 2 words.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
I'm curious about that as well. So a bit about the crucifixion, and then let's focus on prayer. Yeah.
Okay.
And I need some prayer.
Yeah.
Everybody needs some prayer. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Big prayers.
Right now. Yeah.
Constant prayers. Yeah. I don't know anything about Jesus on the cross and the symbolism that goes on with Jesus on the cross. I know his in the text, it says that the striking of the Messiah's heel was a picture of wounding and death of Jesus on the cross. So there's something about Jesus rose on with the cross. Jesus crushed the devil's head, defeating him forever. So in Genesis, the crushing of the serpent's head was a picture of Jesus' triumph over sin. And Satan at the cross, the striking of the Messiah's heel, was a picture of the wounding and death of Jesus on the cross. So in aspect of the serpent, I'm curious about the serpent.
Yeah. So the idea is in the first chapter of Genesis, well, not in the first chapter, I guess it's in the third chapter of Genesis. At the fall, there's a prophecy, there's a promise that Christ, that God says to Eve, right, which is that your descendant, the serpent will bite its heel, but your descendant will crush the head of the serpent. So there's this relationship between the serpent coming to bite the heel of man, but then man ultimately crushing it in the end. And so that is, you could say that is the crucifixion itself, right? Which is that it's Christ giving himself, accepting death, or death biting its heel. And so being bitten by death, but then ultimately resurrecting in the end. And so it's also playing out the story of Genesis and the fall, kind of playing it out upside down, or playing it out fully, where God says to Adam, if you eat this fruit, you will die. And then, Adam eats the fruit and then tries to hide himself, right? Tries to cover, tries to lie, tries to blame it on someone else, does all these things. And so Christ is playing it backwards, which is that although he is innocent, he's accepting the blame. He's doing the opposite of what Adam did, which is to be guilty and then refuse the blame. Whereas Christ is innocent, but accepts the blame and therefore eats of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but in humility rather than in pride, and dies. And so that's the serpent biting his heel. But then ultimately, because of the way that he did it, almost kind of like reversing the fall, you could say, then that's why, well, that's not the only reason why, but that's why it turns into a resurrection where death is changed into glory. And the idea of dying consciously, I mean, that's what it means in the narrative form. I can say it that way, and it's a beautiful pattern. Like it's when we say it's the greatest story ever told, it's this beautiful reversal of a story that was told thousands of years before, but it's also a key to life, a key to how we live our life, which is that if you accept to die consciously, like if you do it consciously, then that death will be to your glory. It won't turn into fear. It won't be fear and distrust and panic and anxiety, but it will actually it'll be a transformative death. Not necessarily your physical death at the end, although that's part of it, but every moment that we have to die to ourselves, let's say, in our lives, where we have to sacrifice some aspect of our desires in order to accomplish something higher. And so it's a key to how reality works, really, right? Because that's really how you realize that anytime you want to accomplish a goal, you have to sacrifice things. But if you do it with resentment and frustration and always kind of going backwards, like being pushed into it, then it will just be painful and you'll suffer. But if you do it consciously and willingly, then it will serve the higher purpose.
Wow, that was complete. So yeah, so the serpent is death. Yes. So the serpent is death. I mean, that's it.
It's a good way to understand the serpent. And maybe it's the easiest way for people to understand the serpent. Yeah. It's change. It's death. It's change. It's change, both in a good and a bad sense, but it really is, a lot of Christians will be surprised that I use that, to say it that way. but it because the image of the serpent in the story of the crucifixion, especially, it's both. It's like it's change, because Christ also in a way becomes the serpent. He's bitten by the serpent. The story of the crucifixion just contains everything. It's really hard to unpack it because Christ is bitten by the serpent, but he also becomes the serpent. That's why even if you look at the cross, you see Christ is often represented almost like in a serpentine form, is because the serpent, there's the serpent below, and then there's the serpent that is put up above. You see that it comes from the story of Moses, where serpents are biting the Israelites and they're dying. And then Moses makes a serpent, puts it up on a pole, and then that is what heals the Israelites. So it has to do with medicine. So you can understand medicine that way. Medicine is like taking the bitter pill in order to get better, doing something unpleasant for the sake of being better. And so you can understand that as the serpent below and the serpent above. Both of them are unpleasant. Like both of them are like a poison. Medicine is a poison, but you take a poison in order to heal. And that's obviously that's true even in physically in terms of how medicine works, but it's also true in your life, right? Jordan always says it, right? It's like you have to pick your poison, basically. You have to pick the right poison because none of it is easy. Pick the right poison, and then that will actually raise you up if you do it consciously and willingly, and you choose the one that will lead to your own healing instead of the one that will bring you down and into more chaos.
So if I'm suffering because I am feeling resentful or afraid or angry, I'm suffering already. I feel an unease. And if I'm going to become humble, so I'm going to die a little bit, I'm going to give up whatever it is I'm holding on to, then I can find a salvation, by letting go of my pride or letting go of my whatever I'm holding on to. And it's painful, right? So that's what you're saying, I think, is that the whole process is painful, but the outcome can be different. Instead of, causing more grief between you and whoever it is that you're talking to, you can find a path of least resistance by letting go of our own tight held, controlling, and fear-based initial stances. We're sitting here in a place of discomfort, and we think if we can have more control, or our way, because if it's not our way, then they won't know how to do it because it has to be our way. And so everybody's holding on so tight. But really, you got to let go. You got to let go of it all because we don't know what to do. And it's getting to be more and more apparent that we don't know what to do. None of us do. And it is up to letting go.
Yeah.
That's a powerful story. I had no idea. Yeah, Adam,
for sure,
to be upside down from Adam. Wow.
The story of the crucifixion. I mean, and this just one strain. There are so many strains in the crucifixion. I mean, you pick the one of the serpent, but it's that story just, it collapses reality. There's so much going on. That's why it's hard to talk. I mean, you can talk about it. I mean, that's why people have been talking about the crucifixion for 2,000 years. It's because it contains so much. And in a way it becomes, that's why it becomes the center. It becomes the cross. Like it becomes the point by which reality starts to turn around that symbol, even for people who dismiss it, even for people who, even now today, even for the most kind of these atheist types, they're still bound to the cross. That is, most of the people that, for example, criticize Christianity are doing it from the point of view of Christianity, or they're using Christianity to criticize Christians. They're using Christian values. They're using the idea of sacrificing yourself for the weaker, of all these images of helping the weak, and also the notion that you have to sacrifice your own pleasures, let's say for the good of everyone. All of this type, even the environmental people, all of this is all ultimately how disformed or distorted it ends up becoming. It all stems from ultimately from the cross. So, and I mean, I'm not saying there aren't any, let's say, shadows of that, and there isn't a little bit of that in Stoicism or Neoplatonism, that there isn't some, or in Buddhism, there's some of that as well. But for sure, for us, nonetheless, it all kind of comes together into that story, and then it becomes the focal point of our civilization.
So earlier on in the same story, the crucifixion story, where Jesus goes away with James and John and Peter. He goes away to pray, and Peter, James, and John go to sleep, and he becomes distressed and troubled.
Yeah.
Because he can see the future. Is that why he's distressed and troubled? Because he knows something bad is going to happen?
No, I mean, it has to do with, you could say that in a way that's what happens on the Mount of Olives is basically giving you one of the keys to what the crucifixion is, or what the value of the crucifixion is. And it's exactly what I said. So Christ comes in prayer with fear and anxiety, and he knows what's coming. He sees it coming, and so it's not just about seeing the future. It's about, it's about all of us who see it coming. We see the wave coming. And that's always what makes us anxious. It's what makes us stressful. All of this, that's what a lot of our pain comes from, anticipating what is coming. And so the solution to that is to be honest and say, I don't want this, but your will be done. If this is what has to happen, then your will be done. And then what happens when he does that is that he receives the consolation of angels. And that's something that you can experience. It's not, I mean, yes, of course, Christ experienced it in a way that is maybe beyond all our capacity to experience it, but we can experience that all the time. And every time you accept, like we said, every time you accept what's going on, like you accept it in the sense that you're not lying to yourself, you're not pretending, you're not being passive aggressive about it. You're saying, I don't like this, but I'm going to say yes, because this is what is in front of me. And then I'm going to move in that yes with just as forthrightly as I can, and move as honestly and as truly and as authentically as I can into what is coming. Then you are free. You're free no matter what happens to you,
So when Jesus goes to pray, he pauses in a way, right? So we don't pause in our society. We react. So there's a lot of reaction, but he prays, he pauses. He's troubled, so he pauses. And he does that 3 times, right? He keeps trying to have his friends wake up and pray with him, to have the people wake up and pray with him. Wake up and pause, right? Don't sleep. Don't sleep.
It's had to do with attention. He's saying attend, because you can't accept something if you don't attend. You have to first of all be aware of what of how things are laying themselves out. You have to be aware in order to say yes. You can't, if you say yes without being aware, you're going to be a slave of what's coming. Right? You're just going to be dragged around by it. You're just going to be tossed back and forth by events. But if you're attentive and you see you see what's coming, and then you say yes. But that image of Christ is very powerful. The image of Christ coming down from the mountain, and then having people sleep at the bottom. It really is a cosmic image, because it has to do with the idea of attention itself, right? Because at the bottom of the mountain, you could say on the periphery of our experience, we have distraction and sleep and all these things that aren't the attention that we need to deal with the world. And so that which goes up to the top of the mountain and attends and sees the pattern of heaven, you could say, is constantly saying to all these elements on the side, wake up, stop being distracted, stop being asleep, attend so that you can live, forthrightly. So obviously it's dealing with what Christ is dealing with there, but it ends up being an image of our experience all the time, like of our everyday experience.
And then the third time he comes, then Judas is there. Judas is there to take him away. So they've slept and not attended for so long that by the time they wake up, the time has passed for them to be helpful. Yeah?
Yeah. But it was going to happen that way. I mean, in a way,
yeah, it was going to happen that way.
But it's still showing us how it works, right? And so if you could say it again the way that I said it. First of all, if you don't attend and you're not brought together, then you will be betrayed by those aspects on the side, like these little things that you let be, that you don't make participate in your attention. Jordan talks about the idea of ignoring the little dragon, right? Ignoring the little dragon that's in your house, and that by the time, if you don't attend, if you don't bring it into the attention, then it's going to eat you, And
Elliot likes that book. Likes that book. There's no such thing as a dragon.
Yeah, exactly. It's a powerful story.
Yeah, and he's just a little guy, He's 18 months old, yet he likes it. It's not a little board book. It's quite a book, and it has a lot of words in it, but he likes that book. Yeah. It's very interesting.
So the betrayer lets in the foreign army because you didn't attend.
Yeah.
So right. It's a cosmic image. It's a cosmic story.
Yeah. And the awareness comes with practice. You don't just get to be all of a sudden aware. Or maybe you do, but usually if all of a sudden you're in a moment, you're aware something has happened. You've stepped in a trap or something, like something, you've stepped in a trap and now you see, oh, I'm in a trap and my leg is held and now I'm aware. And often that is what happens to people. It isn't until their leg is trapped in a snare that they are aware. And that's only the first step to finding your way.
Yeah.
Like that happened to me when I was really sick with cancer, I think. I mean, I'd had a spiritual understanding, but but once my leg was trapped, then my attention changed, and I realized that I had been way too much way too self-centered in my approach to life, right? And so something really drastic had to happen to bring me awareness. And so the world shying away from the necessity of the good life, shying away from that will cause a bigger and bigger trap to be set.
Yeah.
Because it has to be. Yeah.
There's no way out. And so
there's no way out.
But you could also say that it ends it ends well in the end.
Yeah.
That is that bigger trap, and the bigger the trap and the bigger the chaos into which we're heading, or the bigger the kind of authoritarian world in which we're heading, will ultimately lead to a bigger remembering, right? A bigger revelation, a bigger attention, but it's going to be very unpleasant in the meanwhile, And it's the story of Jonah. If you read the story of Jonah, you get exactly that image. Jonah ignores the will of heaven, ignores the will of God, ends up out in the ocean in a strange boat, getting eaten by a fish, getting pulled down to the bottom of the water. And then 3 days later, it says Jonah remembers. Jonah remembers the holy place, remembers God. And then he talks about, the temple and how he wishes he could be back in the center of the world, back in the temple, back in the garden, and then that's that attention, that comes. But it's also an image of the resurrection, by the way, right? That's what the resurrection is. So Christ does it all consciously. It's like,
Yeah.
does he does it all fully, he's willing to even go down there and then bring us up with him. So
Yes. Crazy powerful stuff. So there's a story about in the crucifixion, he says, take this cup from me. And in the Last Supper, there's a cup that's shared. And I read this, Jason Mayer, pastor for Preaching and Vision. I read this from him. He says, what is the hour that has come up, and what is the cup that Jesus wants to pass from him? What's the relationship between the cup and the Last Supper and the cup at the crucifixion?
Are you asking, or
I'm asking.
Are you asking me? I mean,
these were just topics for discussion. Yeah.
Well, so you could imagine the cup as communion. That's what it is. So that's why we call it communion. And so it's that one aspect of the cup, or one aspect is the communion, right? It holds together the liquid, the stuff inside. And so when Christ gives communion to the disciples, gives him the Last Supper, he says, I forget the exact wording, but he says something like, you won't eat and drink with me until we're in the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven, basically. And so when I come into my kingdom, I think is the phrasing that he uses. And so that giving up the cup at the Last Supper is the same giving up the cup at a personal level, you could say. So he's like, I'm giving away, I'm dying, right? So it's like I'm giving away the communion, and then on the Mount of Olives, I'm giving away the communion of my body. Like I'm willing to let it go, you could say. And so that's the cup that, I think so. That's the cup that, or there might also be a relationship between. There's a bitter cup in the Old Testament. There's an image of the cup of bitterness, you could say, where there's this wine that they put spices in, and they make it into like this frothy, bitter drink. And that probably has to do also with the vinegar on the cross as well, like the idea of like a bitter cup, Yeah.
And a bitter cup is the suffering?
Cup is drinking the chaos. It's like bringing the chaos inside. The chaos is supposed to be out here. So you drink the bitterness, and then you ingest you basically you fill yourself. So you could think that in the story of the crucifixion, especially, it's very fascinating because there's always a game played between what's happening to Christ and what Christ is doing ultimately, you could say. So the idea is that, he drinks the bitter cup, which means that he dies, right? He basically ingests the chaos. But then the joke that's being played is that by taking all the death into himself, he's containing it, basically. And so he's drinking up the whole ocean of chaos. And it's not too much for him, ultimately, which is why he resurrects. And so he contains he's able to contain death when death is supposed to dissolve him. So it's like an opposite. There's a whole, like in the Orthodox tradition, if people are interested, there are beautiful service on Holy Friday and on Holy Saturday, especially on Holy Friday, where we talk about the crucifixion. And that's what's constantly being alluded to. It's like, what is the mystery of what is happening to Christ, and how it is ultimately, it's like this cosmic thing where it's both happening to him, but he's causing it to happen. And he's causing it like he's creating the world, you could say. So something like by drinking the cup of bitterness, he's ultimately participating in the creation of the world. This is maybe too mysterious for people who are just watching this, but there's a sense in which some of the saints have said things like that, where when Christ dies and resurrects on the cross, he's creating the world. It's the same as what happened at the beginning of Genesis.
So I see that. I understand what you're saying as the bitter cup being realizing that I am limiting myself of joy, or, you know, so I'm doing something. So I'm resentful, say I'm resentful of my idea of what's going to happen. I'm resentful that it's not going to be as fulfilling for me, because I'm interested in me, myself, and what I'm getting from whatever's happening. And it's a bitter cup to realize that I've been steeped in self pity, and that really, in order to see the benefits of the situation, whatever it is, I have to get out of that and do service for others to benefit from what can be I have to drink this bitter cup of self-understanding in order to cleanse myself of the coping mechanisms that I've used to keep my door closed and my windows shut and everything, right? I'm not sharing who I am. I'm keeping it all for myself, but it's a bitter cup to understand that that's who I am. And that's what I've done, is in order to continue to have everything around me that's mine. And it's like Gollum in a way, right? When you're
No, but the image is perfect. Like the image of perfect, because Gollum, by holding on to his precious, becomes a kind of living dead thing.
Yes. And so the more we hold on to what we are certain of, right? What we are certain of, or we feel we are certain of. But a bitter pill is to understand that this thing we're holding on to is killing us. It's killing us. That's that bitter pill. And we have to let it go. We have to let all of our preconceived ideas go in order to survive, because otherwise we'll die. Yeah, definitely. Oh, man. There's nothing else to talk about.
No, but we could talk about hesychasm if you want, if you're interested.
Yes, I'm curious about that. I'm curious, and I thought, well, that's perfect, because I'm talking to Jonathan tomorrow, so we can talk about this.
Yeah, well, it's interesting also because hesychasm, in a way, is not the rosary, but there's also a prayer rope, which is similar to the rosary, which has usually instead of beads, it's knots on a string. And
is it a short one, like about
there are
this
short
big?
ones and there are long ones. Some people have short ones they wear around their wrist.
I have a short one about that big.
Yeah, just with little knots around it. Yeah, so that would usually be an Eastern prayer rope that you use, very similar to the manner you would use a rosary, where you put your thumb and then you say the prayers, and it keeps your attention. It helps to contain your attention. It also helps you to not have to think about how many prayers you're saying or decide when you stop. It's just like, okay, so you go around the rosary or so many times and then you stop. It's like to make it more less based on your whims, let's say. So hesychasm is the mystical practice of the Eastern Church, and it's really the universal practice of the Eastern Church. And it is about, ultimately it is about union with God. That's what it is about. It's about purifying yourself in terms of removing all the thoughts, removing all the things, removing all these things that kind of creep in from the edges, and being able to capture them and to get rid of them, not get rid of them in a bad sense, but not let them dominate you, you could say. And then focus on the invocation of the name of Christ. And as you do that, then ultimately what you read in the text, in the saints, is that this is what will ultimately lead you into seeing the divine light, or participating in the divine light, and becoming God by participation. That's the ultimate goal of hesychasm, is really to be fully united with God and becoming God to the extent that that's possible. But it's not through pride like Adam did, but it's following in the footsteps of Christ through humility and through grabbing on to the name of Christ. And so this is the basic process. So it's not just the prayer. So obviously there's the prayer and there's the practice, but there's also a whole part of it, which is confession, which is being attentive to your sins, seeing your sins and kind of letting them go. So it's not just a technique. It's part of the liturgy. It's also, you have to be involved in the sacraments. You have to go there. It's not just the technique. It's important to see that first, because I am going to describe the technique, but it's not just that. It has to be involved in the whole life of the church. And then ultimately, so then in terms of the actual practice, it's a prayer, which has several forms, but usually the most usual form is it's Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Sometimes Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. So it can have you could see it in 4 parts or in 2 parts, 2 main parts, right? Which is one which is looking up, Lord Jesus Christ, and then one which is kind of emptying yourself, have mercy on me, a sinner. And it's based on the prayer of the publican, obviously, the publican who is in the temple and who is, beating his chest and saying, I have mercy on me, have mercy on me, a sinner, and so that's what it's kind of based on. So the prayer traditionally is timed with breathing. So you breathe in the first part, right? So Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And you would sit immobile, like you would sit still, and then you would just breathe and then recite the prayer. And you would do that. Ultimately, the monks are supposed ultimately come to do it without ceasing. And this is something which, first of all, I have to say is not recommended that people do. Most people shouldn't do this, but it's important to understand that this is what it ultimately kind of moves towards, where the monk will say the prayer for thousands and thousands of times, ultimately to a point where the prayer becomes a kind of automatic thing that exists in the saint. So they talk about the prayer entering into the heart, where all of a sudden, at some point, it's the heart is praying on its own. And then the entire life of the saint becomes an expression of that pattern. It's basically you can understand it as just a basic rhythm of looking up and breathing in, right? And then looking down and breathing out. So it's just the basic rhythm of existence, the basic kind of bringing together and letting go of the things you have to let go of. And so that is what Hesychasm is. And so the Jesus prayer can be used ultimately to participate in the life of God, and to make that your basic pattern of existence, which is an invocation and a letting go, right? It's like, this is where I need to look, and this is what I need to kind of let drop off. But you can also use it, and most Orthodox Christians will use it more sporadically. That is, either say it for 10, 15 minutes a day, so many times a day. And then some will also use it at moments of crisis. So if you use it, if you have a practice of using it, then when you are tempted, when you have thoughts that you can't get rid of, when you are feeling emotions rise up, then the prayer becomes like a stable place where you can go back into that space of communion with God and invocation and kind of dispel the waves that are coming towards you. And so that is what, let's say, Hesychasm in general is. Like I said, it's bigger than just the prayer, because, the Philokalia is a huge, massive tome. Like, so it's not just about describing
5 tomes, I think.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not just about describing the prayer. It's about describing this ascent of the divine ladder, you could say, as you kind of move up the divine ladder, all the pitfalls that you can come with, all the problems that you can encounter as you're entering into the spiritual life. So that's what the Philokalia is. But it ultimately, in terms of the Jesus prayer part of it, it's very simple, and everybody can do it. Every Christian, every Orthodox Christian is encouraged to say the Jesus prayer,
Yeah, when I first got out of the hospital, I had a priest give me a prayer rope and tell me the Jesus prayer. Okay. And then I interviewed a a priest from the Church of England, and her father wrote a book on the Jesus prayer that I bought, and I'm starting to read. And so it keeps coming back to me. So I thought I might ask you to discuss it.
Yeah, there's a wonderful little book called The Way of the Pilgrim, which
Mhm.
is a short book. Anybody can read it. And it's the story of a Russian pilgrim who learns the Jesus prayer. And it's a nice little narrative. It's not long, but it also has some nice quotes from the Philokalia where you can also get a sense of what this is about without having to get, like you said, these massive tome that is also very cryptic. I wouldn't suggest that people, wouldn't suggest for people to get the Philokalia and start reading it, because it is too technical and too it's meant for monks. It's meant for people that are already, used to the spiritual path, that are already involved in this. And so some of the questions it deals with are so technical that it's like most people don't, it would be confusing for most people, I would say, or it wouldn't lead. Yeah, it would seem a little peripheral to their concerns.
Well, when was it written? How long ago was it written? The 14th century or something? Like,
No,
it was a long time.
The Philokalia is not one person. It's a collection of text, which was not done very long ago. I think in the 18th century,
okay.
That was brought together into one book. And so it's text from the 2nd century, 3rd century, all the way to the time that the book was put together. And so it's not just one person. It's like a manual for the spiritual life of a monk, basically.
Well, I like to pray. It brings me a lot of peace, and I try to, and it's not easy to stay centered, right? We get pulled this way and that way. And I'm grateful for that too, because otherwise I'd have to be alone, and I don't want to be alone. So I'm okay to be pulled this way and that way. That way I have family around me, but I easily get pulled. So I have to be really careful because I can get pulled off center pretty quickly. Daily, actually, So if I'm aware, if I become aware, I can notice that I'm being pulled. And with practice, I can be aware of it and pull myself back. Thank goodness. Sometimes quite quickly, depending on the problem. And so that's why I'm so interested in this, in praying in the Jesus prayer, because I find that for the first time in my life, I am able to center myself and be rid of my discomfort. Wow, wow. Who wouldn't want that? That sounds like a good idea. I can't imagine spending time doing anything else that, I can do other things as well, but this would always have to be a part of everything in order to stay centered. And so that's what I'm finding, is that I have to keep researching prayer and the different kinds of prayer, and how much someone like me, a lay person who's not attached to a church, I'm not, I have a few priests who speak to me, and so I feel like I'm kind of attached, but and with this time of not being able to go to church,
it's hard.
It's hard.
I guess I have a question for you, because I've been wondering about this quite a bit, which is that I was wondering if at some point in your prayer life, that in some point in this kind of this process of prayer that you're in, that if at some point you will start to desire communion. I'm
not sure how important it is. You're going to convince me it's most important. I'm going to convince you
it's important. Well, it's the, how can I say this? It's not just about the bread and the wine, right? The bread and the wine are the point of culmination of something else, which is to be in the body, to be participant in the body. And so participating in the body includes a sacramental aspect of your life, which is that you're not just on your own praying, but that you're praying in the communion of saints, and that involves certain practices, right? There is communion, but there's also confession. There's also all these other things that you participate in, which connect you with others, which connects you also with the hierarchy, like honestly, a hierarchy, and then kind of make you participate. Let's say, bind your participation in an actual body. It's not just it's not a metaphor. It's not just a nice trope.
I don't think of it as a trope. I think of it as a very helpful aid to having deeper faith. But I'm trying to have deep faith, and I'm hoping that I can have deep enough faith without the wafer. That's what I'm hoping.
So let's not talk too. Let's.
I don't mean it's funny. I don't think it's funny at all.
I don't want it to culminate into the it is the culmination of something. That is the taking of communion is the culmination of something. But the thing is actually participating in the way reality exists, you could say. So it's actually being attached to a body, having a certain amount of responsibility to that body, and also submitting some of your will to that body, also recognizing some authority, right? That's part of it too. So you end up having a confessor, a priest. You end up having someone who can I say this, from whom you're willing to accept authority, right? And that's part of it too. It's not just so it's all these things together. So it's hard because most people now, when they think about spirituality, they think about it as an individual, like everybody has their own spirituality. Everybody has their own thing that they do, and it's a kind of a mixture of this and that and this and that. But that type of thinking is in very much in a way a part of this breakdown that we're seeing. The breakdown of connection. And so the notion of the body of Christ, it's a real connection, right? So it's a real connection between people, which is mediated by sacraments. But obviously it's not just that. It's also like help, you're aware of Martha who goes to your church, and you visit each other, or you at least know a little bit about what's going on with them. There's an affection which starts to grow, hopefully, at some point between the members of the body, so that it's not just like I'm doing my prayer life and then, it's not connected. Yes. But if I receive a prayer instead of if I go up for communion, I can still go up and line up with everyone else in the church to receive the communion, but I can receive a prayer instead. But that, I don't know, like, in what church are you talking about? Like, you mean like in the Catholic church?
I think it's an Anglican church. So communion in an Anglican church. So I go up with everybody, but cross my arms, receive a prayer from the priest.
Because usually when you cross your arms, it means I'm not in communion. That's what it means. Oh,
that's what it means. Okay.
Right? Depending on the tradition, like in an Orthodox church, that's not what it means. But in a Catholic church and with an Anglican church, it means you're signifying to the priest, I am not in communion for whatever reason. He doesn't know, like they don't know what reason you're not in communion for. And so therefore the priest won't give you communion. But it's also a recognition of saying something like, I'm not in communion, but I wish I was, right? Or I want to be in communion. So sometimes it means it's someone who has received some kind of discipline. Let's say, example, people who are divorced in the Catholic Church. If you're divorced in the Catholic Church, then you're not allowed to receive communion. But a lot of Catholics will still continue to go to church, but when they go up, they can't receive it. So they'll do this, saying, it's almost like it's a showing of your weakness. It's saying, look, this is something that happened to me. I'm in a position of discipline, I don't want to stop coming to church. I want to continue to marginally be part of this body, but I also understand that I'm not in communion.
Yeah.
So that's usually what it means. So if you're doing that, it's like a weird, I mean, the best thing would be to talk to priests and to see, let's say, but you would also have to kind of decide what body you want to, like, which, sadly, the church is not one. We wish it was, but it's not. And so there's different communions, let's say. And so at some point you have to attach yourself to one and participate. Like, it's about participation too. Like I talk about participation all the time, which is that there's a need to really sit at table and participate in the life of a community for it to be real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's a Russian Orthodox church at the end of our street.
Really?
Yeah, really. And I haven't been to church there. I don't know if they speak English. I don't think so. So I wouldn't understand anything.
Yeah, probably, if you're interested in going to an Orthodox church in Toronto, there is at least one English-speaking church that's there. And you met the priest once a long time ago, actually, Father Jeffrey.
I think I remember at U of T. Was it at U of T?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember. But is that a U of T Russian Orthodox?
I think they rent a chapel at U of T. I'm not sure where they worship, but it's definitely nearby.
Okay, well, we can talk about that more.
Yeah, on another moment.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about it.
Yeah.
I think we finished this conversation.
Yeah.
So now we're going to release all of these.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how people are going to react.
Me too.
Michaela put out the podcast I had with her yesterday, I guess. So I'm curious to see. The comments are super positive. Like the comments are really, really positive. So I'm happy to see that.
Well, I'm sure everything that you've said has been enlightening to me. So I think it'll be very helpful. I'm hoping it'll be very helpful.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing. And hopefully, like you said, I think that if this can give people some hope and I think your story is so bright, and it's also so hopeful that, I'm sure many people will be encouraged by it. And to know, not just in terms of your physical healing, but also in terms of your own kind of spiritual transformation, it's about the physical healing, but kind of letting go.
The physical healing was good. That was good, but it wasn't. It was the spiritual healing, though, because even though I was ill and didn't know if I'd get better, it wasn't as important to me anymore. And that was because of my change of attitude. Yeah, my renewed faith. That's a powerful thing, and it's I just can't say how important it is. It's of the utmost importance to our society. It's what counts. That's what counts. And so I hope that this will be helpful to everybody.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to having another reason to talk to you, so I'll think one up.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime. Are you getting ready for this tour now? Like, I guess.
We're getting ready for this tour. Yeah.
I hope it'll be okay. How is Jordan feeling? Like,
we'll see. Jordan feels okay, but we don't know if it'll go ahead or not.
Right.
Because the world is so weird. We don't know if we'll go to anywhere in Canada because there's no theaters open anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's probably not. And in Europe, well, that probably won't happen either because Europe is crazy.
The
and
US
so we'll
is
see.
The only place.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. And maybe we'll just end up at home, at church.
That's hilarious. So I hope, like, I was really hoping that this would work out for the tour, because I would really like to see you in person to see Jordan and you in person, because I haven't seen you in so long.
Yeah, and we're supposed to come to Montreal.
And so definitely if you come to Montreal and I find out that I don't get to see you, I'll be very unhappy. So you have
Well,
to
you'll
make
definitely
sure.
get to, no, we'll organize that for sure.
That would be wonderful. That would be
But
great.
I don't think that any of the theaters in Canada have been booked because we
No,
haven't been
'cause
able
it's
to.
all, yeah, it's all closed.
Yeah.
No, for
Well-
sure here it's still closed, and it's going to be, they said they're gonna reopen things in the next weeks, but
Kids are going back to school on Monday.
they
is
are,
that
yeah,
right?
exactly. And so they're gonna
Mhm.
start to reopen things, but they've just, I think you probably saw, but now they just said that the third dose will be necessary to keep the vaccine passport
Yeah, good luck
green.
with that. I'm not doing that.
They're really pushing, like they're
Yeah.
pushing hard. And so
No.
I don't know how that's gonna play out. Either they want a bigger scapegoat, because it's all already talking about the fourth dose,
Yeah, I know.
not just the third dose. You can see the fourth dose just coming down the line, and not just fourth dose, but basically continual mandatory vaccination
Wow, that's
for your
crazy.
entire life.
Yeah, no way. I'm not doing that.
So I think so. I think a lot of people are going to say no to that. Like
I
that's
think
just,
so. I think so. People said, "Oh, let's just get it over with."
yeah.
But then it didn't stop. So no. Nope.
Yeah. So
I'm with you on that.
yeah. So I wish you the best on the tour. Like I'll be
Thank
definitely
you.
following from here and seeing how things are going, watching the comments and seeing people what they say. So I'll be
Yeah, we'll
following
see
from,
how it goes. Jordan's
yeah.
going to Washington on Monday, so he's going to be in Washington for a week. We'll see
Okay.
how that goes.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to
Interesting.
join him in Austin. He's going to go on Joe Rogan, and
That's
then we're going to
great.
start the tour.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great way to start.
Isn't it?
Get a bunch of attention. We know to go on Joe Rogan. Oh man,
Yeah.
they'll have so much to talk about because they haven't seen each other. I guess they haven't talked in a while.
No, and he'll have just got back from a week in Washington, so
Oh, man.
there'll be lots to talk about.
All right, that's great. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, say hi to Jordan for me.
I will.
Yeah, anytime. If you want to do another series on another subject, I'll be happy.
I would like to. That'd be great, Jonathan. Stay well.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.